right, and we're back. So, as I promised last week, now I'm going to be doing my live streams on Mondays at 7 p.m. Pacific if you want to join me. But, wow. What can I say that hasn't been said about how great The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom is? Well, not much. And so I'm going to keep this one pretty short, probably. But let's just say you want the short version of it. It's worth your money, definitely. Let's break it down. Welcome to the newest episode of SDW.
Super Darío World!
So, like I said, you want the short version? That's the short version. That's the easy version. That's the easiest thing I can say. If you don't want to go through 10-20 minutes of this. The short version of the game is phenomenal. It's fantastic. It's like Breath of the Wild, but 10 times better, 3 times bigger, faster, all that stuff. There was a lot of controversy when the game was coming out because it's like, oh man, it's been 7 years. There's been a lot of controversy with other video games that come out really glitchy at first. It's costing $70. It's in the Nintendo Switch, so it's not really a new generation technology. Is it going to hold up? The answer to all that is yes, it holds up. Yes, it's worth the $70. It's worth even more than the $70. When the DLC comes out, it's probably going to be worth that too, because it's probably going to have DLCs, because the DLCs from Breath of the Wild were actually pretty good. So again, shortest version possible. Here's the way I look at money, and here's the way I look at things to see if it's your first time on my channel. This is the way I look at money. So in order for something to be worth a particular amount, it all depends on how much money you make per hour. So for example, if you make $10 an hour, if you pay $20 for something, you should be entertained for at least 2 hours, right? Because $10 an hour is what an hour of your time is worth. So a $70 video game would have to entertain you for at least 7 hours. This video game will easily be 100 hours of gameplay. Easy. I mean, Breath of the Wild was, for me, about 100 hours, but I mean, I'm a completionist. I like to do everything. On the storyline alone, you're going to do 60 to 80 hours on Tears of the Kingdom. Easy. So that's $1 an hour. So you're getting a hell of a bang for your buck. And if you just want to go crazy and try out all the other stuff, which feels almost limitless, you can easily reach the 120 hour mark, so it's definitely worth your money. So again, shortest, easiest version possible. It's a great game. It's a masterpiece. Maybe the greatest game of all time, probably. I don't know. Depends on your tastes, but definitely worth your money. So all the other stuff, might be, depending on your own taste, but if we're talking money-wise, definitely worth your money. So, all right, in order to talk about this game, we need to talk about a few things that happened before its release. So again, in my humble opinion, The Legend of Zelda is the greatest video game franchise of all time because the level of every single game has usually been pretty high. They just deliver masterpiece after masterpiece, and every single time they try new stuff, not with the story, they keep that formula pretty much the same. Like they find new ways, more creative ways of telling the same story. So they don't change that formula, but they change the gameplay a lot. They take risks. Like for example, in the Ocarina of Time, you use the Ocarina to change the elements, and you travel through time. So you have to do things as young Link and do things as the grown-up Link, and the things that you do in the past affect the future. In the Wind Waker, you use the Wind Waker and a magic boat to travel around, so you're traveling around on a boat, and you have to control winds and stuff. So again, very different from the previous one. In Twilight Princess, you turn into a wolf in particular periods. That massively changes the way that you fight, that changes the way that you interact with the world. You need a companion that actually helps you out, that's more interactive. So again, very creative, very different, very definitely fun. Definitely a lot of fun. And so consistently, Nintendo has been putting out masterpiece after masterpiece in the Legend of Zelda franchise. And then came Breath of the Wild. And Breath of the Wild was released, I believe, alongside the Nintendo Switch, and it was pretty much a game changer. So let's talk a little bit about Breath of the Wild. Breath of the Wild, again, kind of expensive when it came out. Came out with the new console and everything, but it's, again, definitely worth. Whoa! Wow, this thing got stuck. Interesting. I'm gonna have to fix that. Anyway, but it's definitely worth every single penny. Why? Because it's so different. It feels special. It feels like you're trying something that it felt like it was breaking the way that the open world formula worked up to that period. For example, the key thing in Breath of the Wild was discovery. Every single time you were discovering new stuff, you could travel pretty much anywhere, which wasn't really new, but it's more of the sense that the world doesn't change ever. It's very consistent. So it doesn't matter what level you are. If it's raining, you will slip. I don't think I ever found an item that actually made you not slip. The fights are always difficult. Your weapons will always break. So again, it's very consistent. Some of the things were actually pretty annoying. Like, it sucks that you have a sword that you like and it breaks. But again, it adds to that element of, well, there's danger here. You need to plan your strategy out. You need to plan the way you fight. You need to do a lot of things very differently. And the story pretty much lets you... you can watch the story and live the story if you want. Like, if you want, in Breath of the Wild, you can just go straight at Calamity Ganon, like, after the tutorial, and there's really nothing stopping you. You can just go buck wild and see what happens. I don't recommend it, unless you're, like, really good, but you can do it. You have the option. And so that, again, it changed things up. The story was optional, and it's a great story. Like, I love the story from Breath of the Wild. And so I wanted to live it. Again, I'm a completionist. And also changed a little bit from previous games that before you had, your big temples. And so you go through the temples in order to do yada, yada, yada. Here, instead of temples, you had a bunch of shrines. And then you had the big, the divine beasts and yada, yada, yada. In Tears of the Kingdom, they changed that a little bit. So again, sticking with Breath of the Wild a little bit. So it changed the game. And everybody thought, wow. I don't see how it can get better than this. Not on this console. Like, they would... I would love for Nintendo to release a Nintendo Switch Pro. So it's basically the same thing, but better. Upgraded hardware. But not necessarily for Breath of the Wild, because Breath of the Wild runs pretty well. There's a little things that it lags a little bit, but usually it runs pretty good. And it doesn't really require load time from one area to the other. It's pretty smooth overall. But... again, it is older hardware. We got a new generation of consoles coming out. It's time for an upgrade. I would love to have a Nintendo Switch Plus or Pro or whatever. But Nintendo hasn't done it because Nintendo is the weirdest company in the world. Now, it raised the bar on the level of open world video games, and other video games kind of tried to live up to it. It set the new standard. And again, you keep yourself... You start wondering, like, can they, first off, recapture every single thing that they got right on the previous installment? Like, is this something that can be done? Can you recapture magic, so to say? So, like, as they say. So can you recapture what you did really well the first time, and then can you make it better? This is not an easy thing to do. It's not an easy proposition. In fact, I'd go as far as to say that it's actually a pretty hard proposition. You can't recapture magic. And Nintendo did it. So, first off, I highly recommend that you replay Breath of the Wild, or, watch the story on YouTube if you want before you play Tears of the Kingdom. Not because the story, you need the story in order for things to make sense. Not so much. It's not really because of that. It's because of the way you are going to feel at the start of the new game. So, in the start of the new game, let's just say things are not going too hot in the Kingdom of Hyrule. And again, it's a beautiful game. Visually, it's phenomenal. You get to jump off of things. It's great. I hope you're not afraid of heights or anything. I'm just gonna put a bunch of GIFs here so that it makes sense. But at the start of the game, Link loses because he starts off, with the 2 full rows of lives. He's got the full Master Sword. He's got everything. But in the very beginning of the game, Link loses his arm, and the Master Sword breaks. So it's kind of heartbreaking in a way, because you're like, man, I just fixed this. I kind of just brought the world into order, and all of a sudden, like, you bring me down to the lowest point I've ever been. Seriously? Like, it gives you an interesting feeling, because again, you had just saved the princess. Things were going good in Hyrule. You are the most powerful you've been, and all of a sudden you lose everything. Zelda is lost. She's gone somewhere. I don't know what the hell is going on. The Master Sword is broken. Not lost somewhere and that you need to pull it out of a stone. It's broken, and you lost an arm. So again, it gives you a more intense feeling of dread, because you just fixed everything. Things were supposed to be good, and it kind of feels like some video games have this thing kind of about halfway through where you're like, okay, this is where the video game actually begins. Like, it's pretty clear for some video games more than others, but usually it's like, oh my god, I'm halfway point of the story, and this is where things actually matter. This is where things actually start counting. The gameplay almost completely changed, or they added something that made it completely different, and that's what makes that particular game epic, Things, the moment that thing particularly changes. And in a way, it feels like Breath of the Wild is just the beta test for Tears of the Kingdom. Because again, they took everything that worked from that one and from previous Zeldas and added it to this one. And it still runs pretty well. I didn't really find many bugs or glitches or anything. So that's just, kudos Nintendo. Kudos Nintendo. You did it, you crazy son of a bitches. I don't know how you keep doing it, but you do. So good on you guys. Anyway, more to the point. So I liked it because of that. That's why I say replay Breath of the Wild, or at least, finish it up again, so you get that particular feeling of dread. So if you put both of these kind of like one really, really long video game, it's, I don't know, I guess it's more fun. For me, at least it was more fun, because again, I did it almost back to back. Now, moving on to other things, and again, Breath of the Wild, masterpiece. When it came out, well, as Tears of the Kingdom, its release was approaching, we hadn't really seen much. As gamers, we hadn't really seen what this game was going to be. We just imagined, it's going to be like it looks like another DLC, just they added other stuff for Breath of the Wild, no. Then a month before the game came out, they showed like the true trailer, like the long form trailer, and it was epic, and so everybody got hyped. And so it was a weird marketing strategy, but I guess, it worked out, and they kept things pretty well hidden there in Nintendo. And then as the game drops, you start seeing a bunch of insanity hit the internet, because basically they did everything that Zelda's ever done great, and they added Minecraft on top of it. So now it's almost unlimited what you can create, whether you call weapons, or you can create a giant mech to fight for you. You can create a tank, a ship, or like a plane. It's almost insane the amount of things that can be created in this game. The limit is your own imagination. And some of the things might be disturbing. I've seen a lot of stuff online that's like, oh my god, some of the stuff is epic, some of the stuff is really cartoony, and it leads to a game that has a lot of replay value, and a lot of silliness, and a lot of epicness, all rolled into one, and it works out pretty well. I'd say more than pretty well. So, I already kind of explained where the game begins. Story-wise, it's pretty simple. Zelda and Link are checking out, some tunnels underneath the Hyrule Castle. They find this mummified dude. The mummified dude wakes up. He attacks him. Link loses an arm. The Master Sword is broken. Zelda gets lost, and then Link gets transported somewhere else. And for one reason or another, it turns out that pieces of land are now floating on top of Hyrule. So the interesting part of this, well, there's many interesting parts, but the interesting part here is now the map has 3 levels. So you got the exact same map of Breath of the Wild, except now pieces of land are floating above it. So that's layer number 1, the floating islands. Layer number 2, the regular kingdom, the Breath of the Wild kingdom, and now there's an underground world, an extra underground world underneath everything. That would be the third layer. So they're all the exact same size, meaning that this game, the map for Breath of the Wild, which is already epic, the map for Tears of the Kingdom is 3 times the size of that. Just keep that in mind. It's a gigantic map, and you can jump from one of the islands through, off one of the islands through one of the big chasms that lead you to the underworld, and the game is flawless. It's not gonna glitch. You're not gonna have to load anything. It's pretty impressive what they did with the Switch, which kind of makes me wonder what they could do if they upgraded the hardware. But I guess they didn't really need to upgrade the hardware. Not that much. Again, as I was saying, it leads to a bunch of pretty interesting dynamics. They added a bunch of different abilities. You can use rockets, a bunch of really interesting tech. Again, the gameplay, you kind of have to live it in order to understand stuff. But again, you can create mechs. You can create ships that have their own hovercrafts. The basic thing here is that Link has a fake arm that the Ultra Hand that basically allows you to create stuff, materialize some things out of thin air. Otherwise, kind of fuse them together. Also, you can do that for weapons. Again, it's pretty much the limits of your own imagination, your own creativity. Again, I'm not going to get too much into it because it's part of the fun of exploring the game is exploring all the new dynamics. But let's say, for example, for weapons, you can do stuff like fusing, let's say, an eye with an arrow, and now you got basically a tracking arrow. It's going to track whatever it is that you shoot. Actually, I have a better one here. So you see, it takes a curve because you added an eye to it. It's pretty wild. Again, crazy creative. And so you can, instead of just having a bunch of items that you have, dropped from monsters that you're like, I'm never really going to use this. Now you have a reason to use stuff. Now you can create a bunch of wacky weapons that lead to wacky situations that you never expected. Like you can add a flamethrower to your shield. And so when you're blocking something, you're not only blocking, you're also shooting fire. I don't know why nobody's done it before, but Nintendo did do it. And again, your limit is your own imagination. And so as we talk about the particular world, one of the things about Breath of the Wild, and I'll just go back to this one because this is the one that I just finished. If we go back to Breath of the Wild, the world feels very much like it's moved on, right? It's very peaceful in most places. There's some things happening and that you need to fix, but it feels like the world has moved on. A great catastrophe happened 100 years ago. Link was asleep for 100 years. He woke up, and now he's gonna have to defeat that thing, but he has to fix a few things in order for that to happen, right? He needs to regain his strength and then go deal with that situation. So again, it feels very much chill. The world feels like it adapted to the new normal. It moved on from the chaos. It moved on from all that stuff. They know it's there, but they kind of don't care. In Tears of the Kingdom, that's very different. The chaos is happening right now. You're in the middle of it. Now, they did that in Hyrule Warriors, which it's a fun game. If you're into, what's it called? The Warriors. It's not. Damn it. I forget the name. But it's the Warriors franchise, basically. They throw you right in the middle of the chaos, and it's fun. It adds a few things to the story. I recommend it. Fun adventure. And so they did that. They basically fused those two things in the story for Tears of the Kingdom. They took the world of Breath of the Kingdom, the world after the Breath of the Wild, and they added the sense of urgency, the sense of chaos. The citizens now, some of them are starting their own militias. They're starting to resist the chaos. They need to plan. They need to survive. They need to adapt. And you're in that moment in change. So it's a much more interesting setting than the passive situation that happened before. Again, the world have moved on and adjusted. Here, not so much. And you get to meet some of the characters that you met in the previous game. the storylines don't really, it doesn't affect if you help them out in the first game or not. So if you skipped a bunch of the side quests, it doesn't really affect it. It's its own different thing. This is not Mass Effect, but it's fun to see them now grown up a little bit. The towns, there's a town that you help start when you help them start building a town in Breath of the Wild. Now the town's actually developed in Tears of the Kingdom. So again, there's continuity there, but the important thing is that the world feels more alive. Breath of the Wild felt like the world was breathing. It felt organic in many ways. Here, it's even more. Now you feel like it has a brain. Now, it's not on the level of other games that you feel like have a brain. Like, let's say, for example, Red Dead Redemption. Probably you feel that a little bit more. But this one is definitely an upgrade there. They do a lot of quality of life stuff, it's what it's called, that they upgraded. So quality of life, meaning the two biggest things that were really annoying is that in Breath of the Wild, when you have a full inventory, let's say of swords, and then you find a chest, and so you try to open the chest, and it's a sword, it won't fit in your inventory, so you have to pause the game, you have to go into your inventory, you have to drop one of the swords, and then you can open the chest again and add it. Here, it gives you the option of, do you want to drop something from your inventory? You can do it direct. Also, when you're cooking stuff, which is very important because that's pretty much how you gain life again. So when you're cooking a recipe, it's like before you had to remember the recipe, you need to remember the order of the ingredients, you need to remember a whole bunch of stuff. In Tears of the Kingdom, you can actually just be like, oh, these are the recipes that you know, these are the ones that you have the ingredients for, so you can just go straight at it. So it saves up a bunch of time. If you were into that stuff, cool. If not, well, doesn't really matter. You can, again, skip a bunch of time there. The game also rewards you in many different ways. Like, say, for example, I am the type of gamer that if I know that the story goes to the left, I try to go to my right. Just because I do not want the story to... I care more about exploring. I don't know why, but I'm an explorer. I prefer going that way. And there's situations in this game where you think you're going away from it, but you're actually going straight into it, and you're going to find something important. So it's rewarding. It's very rewarding in that sense that even though you're going off script, you're still part of the story. The story is actually told in the same way that, it's told in Breath of the Wild. Like, you need to go through certain areas, activate memories, and that's how you remember the things that happened before, blah, blah, and then you go to find Zelda, and that triggering memories. Here, it's pretty much the same. Depending on the area that you are, you can trigger a memory. And the big issue here is, well, it's not a great way to tell a story, but it opens up the ability to have this open world there. It really doesn't matter which way you go. You're still going to get, if you want to have the full story, you're still going to have the full story. But the key thing here for this one is that it kind of makes it, the story is kind of a mystery. Like, they show you some things that maybe you're like, this seems a bit shady, so I kind of need to figure this out a little bit more. Again, I'm not going to get into detail because that would be a spoiler. But another thing that's great that was added here is the villain. Now, it's Return of the Demon King, which is Ganondorf. Ganondorf's one of the greatest greatest villains in video game history. And here, unlike in Breath of the Wild, Ganondorf actually has a personality, which is great. Villains, in my humble opinion, need to have a personality, and it makes things more, let's say, terrifying. I don't know why. You think that a giant monster is just that's all raw power and chaos would be terrifying enough, but no, the fact that it can talk to you is even more terrifying because it can think, and so now it can beat you strategically. I don't know. I think intelligence and more than raw power is a little bit more terrifying. Now add intelligence to raw power, you're screwed. They also added a bunch of fun little dynamics like in the underworld, if you get hit by a thing called gloom, your hearts do not regenerate. You need to go back into the light and all that stuff. So again, it feels completely different to be up in the sky than to be underground and then to be just running around in the middle of the world. And in Breath of the Wild, you get kind of rewarded in a way for you did something in a way, and you're not sure if that was the right way of doing it, but you did it. You got away with it. So it's like, that was fun. Here in Tears of the Kingdom, they embraced that 100%. They realized, all right, listen, players are gonna play. They are gonna figure out a way to do stuff, and they're just gonna do it. So if the objective is you need to get from point A to point B, and they want you to go through point A1, A2, A3, A4, A5, blah, blah, before you get to B, well, you can just skip it if you're creative enough. Like, I've seen videos of people just making giant bridges, like giant epic bridges that, just knock down a bunch of trees, and through those giant bridges, they get to the point where they needed to go. Kudos to you guys. You didn't do it the way that they expected or the way that the game developers wanted, but they gave you the freedom of doing it, which is a lot of fun. You're not being blocked, like C-blocked in any way, at least that I could tell off the top of my head, or at least I haven't encountered it. And again, I haven't gone through a lot of the game because I wanted to go back and finish the other ones first. So I've barely even gotten a little taste of it, and it's like, wow, this is phenomenal. This is great. It feels like every once in a while you're playing it and you're like, wow, this is just a masterpiece. So the question now for Nintendo is how do you go bigger now? You took everything that was great about the first one, you fixed all the annoying stuff, and you made it better. And you gave us a bunch of, again, you added Minecraft on top, so you added a whole bunch of creative freedom. Where do you go from here? Is this the apex? Is this your magnum opus? Can you even go higher? They raised the bar yet again. So again, they raised the bar. Zelda does this. They raised the bar with Ocarina of Time. Then, kind of with Majora's Mask, they stayed stable. Wind Waker, I believe, was stable. I believe they're kind of on the same level. Then, I believe with Skyward Sword, which wasn't really that popular. But then Breath of the Wild came out, boom, raised the bar. Industry-wide, bar is raised. And now, Tears of the Kingdom comes out, the bar gets raised again. How do you reach that? How? Now, again, they do a bunch of really good things. They take risks, not on the story side, but on the creative side. They listen to the feedback, and they are very careful when they deliver stuff, because they did not deliver a game that was unfinished. They finished it before they delivered it, before they started selling it, which is something that a lot of developers need to learn how to do. They're very protective about this IP, and it shows. And again, it seems like it's been a pretty worthwhile investment so far, because they keep delivering and delivering time after time after time. So they need to, the rest of the industry needs to learn. They need to take note. They need to follow this formula. But I don't know where you go from here, man. Like, I'm not that creative. Like, I don't see it. Again, maybe I need to finish the game in order to be like, to have a clearer picture of it. Like, is there going to be a sequel after this? I did not expect a sequel after Breath of the Wild, but there was one. So who knows? Who knows what? Right now, the sky's the limit, and so far, I don't know what they're going to think of next. Honestly, I don't know where you go from here. But I'm great that this is here, because again, bunch of replay value, and I mean a ton of it. So this, listen, Breath of the Wild was a console-worthy game. Like, it was worth buying a Nintendo Switch in order to play Breath of the Wild. Tears of the Kingdom is a must-play almost. Like, I'm never gonna say must-play, because again, it's expensive to buy video games, and if you don't have the console, maybe you can't afford it or whatever. But it's, in my humble opinion, worth it. If you didn't have a Switch before, you should get it now just so you can play this game. And again, it doesn't really matter if you played Breath of the Wild. It's better if you did. Always, it's better if you play the one before it. But I highly recommend you play this game. This game will be, or is currently in the debate of the greatest video game of all time. It's in the debate. The biggest flaw the game has is that the Switch is not powerful enough to unleash its full potential, and it lags a little bit in certain spots. Not so much, not to the point that it affects the gameplay. It's just a little annoying. So Nintendo needs to step up their game in the hardware arena, but as far as the game goes, it's a chef's kiss. Beautiful. Fantastic. It's again, 100 hours seems like not so much, honestly. Because the map of Breath of the Wild times 3. It's a ginormous map. Ginormous. And some of the puzzles kind of like require you to do stuff on 3 different levels. So again, definitely worth every single penny. So I think that's as much I can do without doing any spoilers here. I think it's a good place to stop, because honestly, I feel like I've rambled on for too long, and I kind of just want to go back to playing the game. So I'll leave it there. As always, comments, questions, or suggestions, you can find me at Super Dario World and at Dario SDW on Instagram. Like, follow, subscribe, all that stuff. It really helps me out. I really appreciate it. And yeah, I'll announce other stuff as the week goes. Tomorrow, it's supposed to be the return of Otaku Tuesday. I'm not going to do it live. I'm going to just, pre-record something. But the plan for the moment is that I will be doing live streams Mondays at 7 p.m. at Super Dario World on YouTube and on Twitch. So again, 7 p.m. Pacific. I'm not sure what I'm going to talk about next week. I'm not sure what I'm going to talk about Wednesday. I know that Thursday I'm going to be doing like a review of older films and the influence that it had. I like under the title Underrated Gems. I'm not sure if I'm going to keep it, because they're not all underrated. But I don't know. I like it. We'll see how it goes. Like I said, as always, thanks for joining me, and I'll see you again next time.